I first came across the men's rights movement after reading an article by Kay Heimowitz. She'd written a book called Manning Up, and there were articles about it. And all those articles were Kay Heimowitz telling men that they were failing women, that they were letting them down, that they weren't living up to women's standards. Now, if you were to reverse that and you were to have men criticizing women as a gender for not living up to men's standards, there would be outrage. So I started a thread on a forum asking that very question: how can this woman say such a thing? And how can anybody support this? And I got accused of being an MRA, which I had to look up, and then found out that I was in fact an MRA. I just hadn't known it. So that's the story of how I became a men's rights activist, the short version. Now, that's not the only gem that Kay Heimowitz has offered the world. She's also said these days experts might put it this way. They might, but they haven't. Only people like Kay Heimowitz would put it this way. She says, boys come into the world with less natural human capital than do girls. Kay Heimowitz says this not just as an intellectual, but she says it as a mother of boys. It's shocking. I've actually put off making this video because I've been extremely upset, but not by the Heimowitz quote. I've discovered that later. It was actually an article in the New Statesman by somebody who goes by the name Glosswitch. And oh, what a witch she is. She despairs because she's the mother of boys, and she's trying to raise them in a rape culture. Now, just like patriarchy, which doesn't exist, rape culture also does not exist, as divulged by RAINN, who is the leading rape crisis line for women in all of the states, and they have denounced rape culture as being unhelpful. Here's why it's unhelpful. Glosswitch says, as the mother of boys, I know I'm expected to suppress my resentment. Yes, you certainly are. Because they're boys, they're children, and you are their mother. And mothers should not resent their children. If you find yourself resenting your children, you should probably try to get them a new mother, or commit yourself to therapy. She also says, I'm expected to wring my hands about their self-esteem. Well, yes, because raising children with self-esteem turns them into good people, with self-confidence, with a lack of desire to hurt other people because they feel very good about themselves and therefore they don't want to lash out and hurt people. They also don't want to kill themselves. There have been a number of boys raised by feminists who have admitted that they were suicidal. Recently on one of my YouTube videos, somebody said that by the age of 8 he wanted to kill himself, and I want to thank him for sharing that story. And hopefully other people will read that, and if they've been in a similar situation, they'll know that they're not alone and it was not their fault. A mother's job is to raise their child with self-esteem. Then she finishes with a number of things, but I'm meant to worry about them disliking themselves, not about whether they will also learn to dislike women. Yes, you are meant to, because they're children and they're not living in an adult world. And when they do get to that adult world, they will not be living in a patriarchy and they will not be living in rape culture, because those things are myths. They don't exist. And as the adult, you're meant to be able to decipher reality from non-reality and teach that to your children. Glosswitch also has no patience for having to worry about whether or not her children will think that she's too much of a harpy. Well, she must not care what the rest of us think then. One of the oft-heard sayings from feminists is, feminism is fixing it. Well, I beg to differ. Feminism is breaking it. Feminism is actually deepening the gender divide in the world. And you're doing that from the very, very tender age of birth. Feminists are raising a toxic culture full of princesses and monsters. Of course, neither one of those is true. Princesses are from fairy tales. They're Disney creatures. And little girls growing up dreaming of weddings before they even have an idea of who they're going to marry. It's all about the wedding, and it's about finding a prince who's going to take care of you, who's going to provide for you. Oh, and that's supposed to be patriarchy. No, it's not. It comes from girls being spoiled and being treated like princesses by their parents. And monsters. Well, they don't exist either. Children are born innocent. And as another feminist said, I am a mother to sons, only sons. I am a mother raising the enemy. Well, yes, you are, because of your attitude. It's that attitude that turns men into the enemy. And it's your fault. It really is. Parenting is the biggest responsibility a person can be given. And feminism, you are failing. You are utterly failing. Contrary to the idea of patriarchy, you have to look at reality, and it doesn't take a lot of research or studies to know that this is the truth. Children's primary contact are women. Women raise them, women teach them. Principals might be male, and we know feminists like to complain about that, but the primary influences upon children are women from the time of birth to probably graduation from high school. And of course they encounter peers in there, but women are the ones who are ingraining social attitudes in their children. So where's the patriarchy? It's a matriarchy. And if feminists want to blame the way they raise their children on men, then basically that's just an infantilization of women's responsibility and accountability for their own choices. The power is in your hands, women. It has always been in your hands. You are the ones raising children. You are the ones deciding whether or not they enter the world with confidence and how they treat the other people around them based on whether or not you've done your job properly. Now, when women are convicted of crimes, feminists like to wail about how this woman has been abused and how this woman had all these excuses for why she committed the crime. But of course, they never want to look at the same factors for men. Abuse can always go backwards. You can always trace it to childhood. And women are the #1 abusers of children. Although if you Google it, you'll only find out if you type in neglect. They don't call women's abuse of children child abuse, they call it child neglect. Just as they don't call women's killing of children murder, they call it infanticide. So it's time for feminists to stop bullshitting the world. If they truly, truly want to have a future of people who are self-confident, who are good, grounded people, who don't hurt the other people around them, then they will stop lying about women's power, about women's influence, and about women's violence. And the first thing they can do is stop abusing their children. Stop abusing your boys by telling them that they are born into some